Welcome in, Jason Priester, Clemson Insider. I want to say thank you to everybody that's tuning in. Before we get started, I want to thank our sponsor, A-Glass. For all your auto glass needs, they do replacement, they do repair. 2 locations right here in the PD, one in Florence, one in Sumter. Get yourself a free quote today, myaglass.com. Spring game is in the books. And I got to say, while I had some questions about, how it was going to play out and the format and exactly what we were going to see, I was overly just overjoyed with the new format. I kind of hope this sticks. Instead of the rosters being split up, I much rather see the full first team, the full second team, the full third team, kind of battling it out with each other. I thought there were a lot of things we got to see. I thought there were a couple of things we didn't get to see. I didn't think with so many offensive linemen out, it was kind of a makeshift offensive line running with the ones. You got a good first impression of Braden Jacobs. There were a lot of guys out, so I don't think you could get the, a full grasp of maybe exactly where the running game is. Didn't see Gideon Davis didn't have a whole lot of room to run. He got plenty of opportunities, just didn't have a whole lot of room to run. Showed his abilities as a pass catcher. I thought EZ showed a lot of signs of progress from where we saw him in the spring game last year. Still runs up a little bit too high, which can lead to some ball security issues. And we could hear Dabo on the mic one time. I can't remember. He told him not be swimming with it or something like that. I'd have to go back and look exactly what he said, but he was basically preaching ball security to him. I think Tristan Smith might have stole the show, man. I've said all along I thought he was going to be a guy that could help. That only reinforced that opinion. He looks like a guy that can really help. He gives you that, big, long thread on the outside. I think he can come in, but particularly come in handy in the red zone. Dang. Sitting here kicking my own table. But I thought there were a lot of good things, man. The defense was, I thought they were much better when it comes to just some of the little things with being in the right places, tackling, some of the fundamental stuff. Didn't get to see a whole lot of some of the starting defensive linemen like T.J. Parker and Peter Woods. Didn't see Demonte Capehart at all. He had something cleaned up. I think it was the day before the spring game. But man, I thought Jeremiah Alexander looked good. Didn't get to see a whole lot of Will help, but I thought there were a lot of positives. We've already had one spring portal departure, or we'll have one when it opens. Tafoy Fegan will enter the portal when it opens. I think it is on the 16th. I think anybody that listened to Dabo's presser after the spring game, the writing was kind of on the wall there when Dabo kind of pretty much said, he wasn't here. I kind of heard some rumblings a year ago that he might be a portal candidate after last spring. Didn't play out that way, but you're not getting under in this new era, this new landscape, whatever you want to call it. We're not gonna, hold on to everybody. And I don't think this was a case of tampering or somebody reaching out and poaching or anything like that. I just think it was a case of two sides needing to go their opposite directions. I thought Chris Vazina I thought he looked really good. I thought you could tell there's a lot to work with there with Chris Denson. Still maybe doesn't have the strongest of arms. We heard Dabo talk about that after the game, talking about how he needs to develop his lower body so he could get some more into his throws. But you can tell, man, there's a lot to work with there. But outside of Tristan Smith, I think Vazina might have impressed me more than anybody. He's kind of been, I think I've called him an unknown commodity for a while now and many times, and you're not going to know it until you see him. And while it was only a scrimmage and the spring game is certainly not the be-all, end-all, he was so much better than what he was this time last year when we were talking about him after the spring game. Got to feel much more comfortable, if you were to have to call on him at some point than, you would have maybe been last year. So those are some of my thoughts. You can tell me some of yours. We can discuss them. This is going to, for all you football people, this is going to be pretty much all football tonight. We take it wherever you want to go. The first one, give me a recruiting update and if Dabo's going to the portal. I don't think Dabo even knows yet if he's going to the portal. Some of that might depend on who might leave, when the portal window opens. It's one, he said publicly they were happy with what they have right now. I wouldn't be shocked to see him take a look at a punter. To me, that was still might have been the most disappointing thing of the whole day. I didn't think either punter looked particularly impressive. There was no punt that traveled more than 40 yards. I think 40 was the longest. I don't think either of Jack Smith's went 40 yards. I know he shanked one off the side of his foot. I didn't see his second one, but I saw the distance, after it was over. And so that's still an area of concern. But other than that, I don't know that you need to look for anybody in the portal, not to mention the fact you're pretty much full right now. I think we'll see if, the house settlement stuff's being finalized as we speak. They were in court again today. Wouldn't shock me if Clemson stayed at 85 for the year for one more season. Also wouldn't shock me if they decided to go to 105, which they probably will. But that doesn't mean all of a sudden you got 20 extra spots. I think some people lose sight of that fact. There are a lot of walk-ons that I think Dabo will keep around and not cut for another season, because let's say you go to 105, you're still going to have to cut some guys either way. But they're not going to cut 20 guys just so they can go add 20 from the portal, if that makes sense. So numbers are tight. I don't know, outside of punter, I don't know that there's that a big need anywhere, to be quite honest. People might disagree with that, but that's kind of how I see it. I think they did a pretty good job of addressing those needs over the offseason. And as far as recruiting update goes, Gordon Sellers was there Saturday. He's going to announce not this coming Saturday, but the next, decked out in all Clemson gear. I think if you're Clemson, you're probably thinking you're sitting in a pretty good spot right now. Clemson's already got the 2 wide receivers on board. Naeem Burrows and Connor Salmon gonna have at least one. They're gonna add one more to that group. If you can add a guy like Gordon Sellers, you should be extremely happy with those 3. They did hand out a new offer to an offensive lineman, a 3-star from Mississippi, Mitchell Smith. Talked with him a couple months ago. I remember after Matt Luke went and saw him at his school, or I can't remember if it was at his school or at his home during the evaluation period. But this is one Clemson's kind of getting in late on. We'll see how much traction they can gain. Sure wish someone at the game Saturday would have recorded it and put it on YouTube so us unfortunate people could see it, and Clemson would have probably tagged it with a copyright. It was very fast. It was done in under an hour and a half. They had a running clock in the second, third, and fourth quarters, if I'm remembering right. I know there was in the third and fourth quarter. I think there might have been in the second quarter too. Don't hold me to that. But except when it got to under 2 minutes, then they went back to normal so they could do some 2-minute stuff. But I do believe, I know the cameras were rolling because it was on television inside the stadium, or you got the video, and we had video on inside the stadium in the press box and stuff. I think they're gonna, compress it into like maybe a 1-hour special on Clemson Plus at some point over the next couple of weeks. So maybe be on the lookout for that. Gonna be a lot of fan chanting middle of next week when the window opens. Already some fans demanding experienced cornerbacks and safety. It's hard to go out and get more experience at corner than they've already got with Terrell and Lucas, and then throw Ashton Hampton into the mix, who's probably going to start this year. He didn't play Saturday. The 2 corners were in non-contact jerseys because the receivers were in non-contact jerseys. You don't want to get any of those guys hurt. I don't know that that's going to happen, though. But there's always going to be those that, think they should ditch this guy because they think there's a better guy in the portal, even though a guy's a 3-year starter or a 2-year starter. There's just the world we live in. Already got my LSU tickets. Chris Denson impressed me. Yeah, he was a guy. The first practice that we were allowed in to watch, the first practice of the spring, if I'm pretty sure. Don't think they had practiced the day before. I'm pretty sure that was the first practice of the spring. He looked, the ball wasn't coming out of his hands very good. He threw it. Of the little I watched him, there were a lot of the balls were wobbly coming out of his hands. Some of them looked like wounded ducks. The second day we were in there, which was day 3 of practice, I thought he looked much better. But yeah, he looked pretty good Saturday. You can tell, you can see what the coaches saw in him and why they took a flyer on him. There's a lot to work with there. He's a true dual threat guy. And he's only going to get better as he gets stronger. I saw somebody in the comments on our Facebook page, it might have been yesterday, talking about how Denson needs to be the backup, man. I'm just sitting there, scratching my head, and I'm like, man, I don't know. I'm not nearly going that far. He's clearly a guy that's going to need a year in power hour and in the weight room and stuff to have a little strength. But yeah, that pass he threw to Gideon Davidson That was a well-placed ball. You know, he doesn't have the strongest of arms, but the ball placement was there. And his arm will get a little stronger as he gets stronger. But, yeah, I mean, Denson was 4 of 4. He didn't throw an incompletion, and then he had the run that if they weren't playing two-hand touch with the quarterbacks goes much further than the 12 yards he was given credit for. So, I mean, he showed some flashes of what the coaching staff saw in him when they, decided to offer him after Blake Hebert flipped. Because there were some different directions they could have gone there. And that's the direction they decided to go in. And we saw some reasons why Saturday. Easy looked really good to me from how he's improved from last year. Yeah, I think there's probably a night and day improvement. He when we saw him in the spring game last year, he kind of looked like a guy that probably needed a year. Again, I still think he runs a little high sometimes still, but he's developed that patience you need as a running back, where you're not hitting the hole before the hole develops. You got to kind of develop some guys kind of have to develop a feel for that patience. And, he showed some of that off. He showed some field vision off. I've always been pretty high on him. I thought he's, was pretty undervalued by some of the services. He's probably faster than most people think or realize, people that don't follow recruiting. I think he ran like a 10.89 100 or something like that. That's pretty good for a running back. I think he's a guy that can help them this year. Him and Gideon and, heck, even Adam Randall's probably much further along than I thought he would be at this point. Did see Gideon get blowed up a couple of times in pass protection, but as a true freshman, you kind of expect that to be the area where he needs to improve the most, pass protection. So that's kind of not all that shocking. It took Travis Etienne a year before he started to settle into the pass pro and stuff. Might be the same thing with Gideon, but he'll give you everything else, and he'll make that running back room better. Smith is Mike Williams-esque. Lacks the speed for sure. And he'd be the first one to tell you that. Yeah, he's not going to blow by anybody. He's going to have to make sure he doesn't get jammed at the line of scrimmage, with that kind of length. He's 6'5", man, and he looks longer than that. So he's going to have to, that's going to be one of the big things with him, making sure he doesn't get bounced off track at the line of scrimmage by some physical DBs. But yeah, there's a lot to like about him. He gives you something you didn't otherwise have. He's a wide receiver, unlike Antonio, unlike Wesco, unlike TJ Moore. They don't have that 6'5" guy. I think TJ Moore is 6'3", and he's probably the tallest of that bunch. Wesco's probably, I think, 6'2", and Antonio's more like 6 foot. So he adds a dynamic to that room that you didn't otherwise have, and I think he's going to help him. He's not going to beat out any of those three guys, but he's going to rotate in and out quite often, and I think he's going to make plays for this team this year. I think he could have 400 or 500 receiving yards easily, because I think he's going to be a big play guy. Plus, he gives you a guy that can go up and get those 50-50 balls. That is something Clemson really hasn't had, in the past few years. Latest on basketball transfer portal news. I haven't really heard much of anything. I heard one name tossed around Saturday, and it turns out there's nothing there. You already got the two bigs in Carter Welling and Nick Davidson, and then you brought back R.J. Godfrey. So you got the front court kind of established. Now you got to find a piece or two to plug into the back court. I would think, with Dylan Hunter being really the only experienced guard you have, you also have Zach Foster, who's going to be a true freshman, who I think can help them next year. He's probably the only true freshman that will be ready. But I don't think you want to go in to a season with just 3 guards. So I think Brownell will probably try to add 2. That would be what I would look for. But I haven't heard a lot of names thrown about. I saw the Pat. I saw Clemson linked to the Pat kid from Miami. Matter of fact, he's already committed to somewhere else, and I wasn't buying into that. There's a guy that jumped into the portal on Saturday from UT Chattanooga, where Greg Poppy used to coach. I think it's UT Chattanooga. And his girlfriend is his girlfriend's at Clemson now. So, we thought there might be a connection there, but it doesn't seem to be. I think there's a little bit of a dead period in place while the Final Four is going on. So we'll see what happens. I think Brownell's going to add a couple more, though, both guards. You got to add at least 1, and I think he'll add 2. Did you notice the difference in baseball team on true road trip? Those road trips build chemistry. Outside of Saturday, not really. I thought they looked like they didn't get off the bus until about the 7th inning Friday. They were 1 for something with runners in scoring position again yesterday. So no, I didn't really see a big difference. They had that day Saturday where they scored however many runs it was, 13 runs in the first 2 innings, and didn't score again over the next 5. But sometimes that's how that plays out. But I still see a team that's kind of struggling to come up with that clutch hit sometimes. And I think yesterday was a testament to that. Friday was a testament to that. I was glad to see Darden kind of have a bounce back performance and not have a 4th bad start. Good to see BJ continue to do what he's been doing. Lucas Malstead, 3 saves this week. He just keeps continuing to get it done. But it was. I do agree though that the road trips build chemistry. I don't know that I saw a whole lot different. I'll be out there tomorrow night. Matter of fact, I'm fixing to head that way as soon as we're done here. So I'll be up there tomorrow. I'll be there Friday. And then I'll be back for all 3 games against Louisville. But it is nice to see Josh Payno starting to come out of it. We saw just Colin Priest start to come out of it some last weekend, and Payno's kind of coming out of it now. I forget he hit well over 400 in the 4 games last week. Man, he had a really good week. That's a guy they kind of needed to get going, and they just need to start finding. Some of those balls they hit when runners in scoring positions just got to start finding some green, and it'll all start clicking for them. But I think it's overly impressive that they already have, they've already hit the 30-win mark, and I don't think they played nearly their best ball yet. Do we need a transfer corner, or do we have the depth behind Figan? I don't think Figan would have been into 2 deep this year. So no, I don't think you need to go out and replace him. Again, you've got Avion Terrell, you've got Ashton Hampton. Those will probably be your 2 starters. You got Lucas who can rotate in there. You got Corian Gibson, who redshirted last year, who was, very highly rated coming out of high school. I thought Brandon Strozier showed a lot of improvement yesterday. Was it all good? No, but I thought he showed marked improvement from where he was last year. So, I mean, I think they got some depth there. I don't think it's anything they got to hit the portal to replace. Yeah, I thought Vazina looked, you know, I don't even think good is the right way to say. I thought he looked fantastic, man. He was 6 or 7, um, for 75 yards. I forget what his longest was, but he had a good run there too. That like Denson's run, it probably goes further if they're not playing two-hand touch with the quarterbacks. But Vazina's always been a guy he's I wouldn't call him a true dual threat, but he's a guy that can beat you with his legs. He is faster than people, or let's just say quicker than probably a lot of people would give him credit for, because he just looks so big. And a lot of times kids that size he's a lot of times quarterbacks that size can't move the way he can. He is what I like to call deceptively quick. And he's got a big arm, man. I was thoroughly pleased with what we saw from him Saturday, and I thought he's been a big question the past year. So again, it's just a spring game, and again, they're not the be all end all, but I think it's a pretty good sign of the direction he's headed and some of the progress he's made. What position was Hanafin taking snaps in? Thought I saw references to nickel. If I'm remembering right, I think he was lined up in a couple of different spots. Might have seen. I want to say he might have been in the nickel some, and I think he was in one of the other safety spots too a little bit. It might have been a little bit of both. Don't hold me to that. That once we got deeper into that thing, man, I was trying to type and write at the same type and watch at the same time. And as fast paced as that thing was, I missed a lot there in that second half. Thoughts on Davidson eventually taking over the starter role? I don't think he'll be the starter headed into game 1 against LSU. That'll probably be Adam Randall. He's probably gonna eventually make me out to be dead wrong about him, the way some of the things I've heard about him this spring. Because I've said all along I didn't know that he could be a featured back, and I thought he could help you, maybe give you 4 or 5 carries a game. But it sounds like it's heading in a very good direction with him. I have said in the past that I thought Davidson could win the job during the LSU game. But a lot of that's going to depend on Randall too, and where Gideon is with his pass pro. Whether he runs out there first or not, you're going to see a lot of that guy. I don't think there's going to be a featured back like there was with Mafah last year. I think we'll see at least 2 rotating in and out, and maybe 3. Also wouldn't shock me to see a couple of those guys, follow Fegan into the portal, because there's just only one ball and so many snaps to go around. But I could absolutely see a scenario playing out where Davidson wins that job. Maybe taking a similar path that like ETN did. Once you start playing him a little bit, he just gives you so much that you can't take him off the field. The more ETN played, it didn't take him long before he was getting the most carries of anybody. But again, Adam Randall's going to have some say in that too. Heck, maybe he has a little bit of say in that. We'll see. And we'll see where Jay Haynes is back in the fall. He looked like he was moving around good on the sideline there Saturday. He's not wearing brace or anything like that. And he just, had that ACL surgery in December. So good sign on him. But sometimes it takes those guys a little bit to get full trust back in those knees after they tear that ACL. But I think that's I think that the Davidson thing can go in a couple of different directions. I wouldn't be outright shocked if he's just so good that he ends up giving them no choice but to run him out there first, pretty early in the season. But it also wouldn't shock me to see him and Randall kind of become a tandem if Randall keeps coming along at the pace it sounds like he's coming along. Sometimes you don't know. Some of the stuff you hear during the spring is overhyped a little bit. Let's put it that way, especially some of the stuff you hear publicly. But when you start hearing some of it from some people behind the scenes, that's when I start taking notice, and I've heard some of that about Randall, all spring long. Yeah, poor little Harrison was trying to steal the show there at the end of that thing Saturday, but that was one of the highlights of the day, man, and they only gave him one good punt. To me, that is a terrible sign. No pressure. Just kick the ball to the boy, and they couldn't do that, man. I don't know. I do not have a good feeling about the punters that were, that we saw punting the ball Saturday. Jack Smith's been there long enough now to where he should have developed more consistency than what he's shown, at least in front of us so far. I haven't really seen enough of the McCune kid to give a fair assessment, but the little we saw in practice wasn't overly impressive. It sounded like they were letting Robert Gunn do some punting during the early part of spring practice. I never heard of what came of that. For you that asked that, I've heard that's already, that was something they'd already done early in spring practice, but that might be one of the biggest questions heading into fall camp if they've not gone to the portal to address the punter spot. Punting can, if you got a bad punter, man, he can put you in a bad spot multiple times a game. For all of you that's followed Clemson for so long, you are very, very in tune to that fact because you've seen it more often, probably more than you'd like to remember. Look like the wide receivers room is as full and loaded since the days of T. Higgins, Hunter Renfrow, and Mike Williams. I don't disagree with that. Not only that, you got some depth, and I think you got some variety. Look at that catch Cole Turner made the other day, not Nolan. Cole Turner made the other day. That was a heck of a catch, man. He didn't play much. Dabo said he was on a pitch count or a snap count after the game because he's been dealing with something. But, man, that was a heck of a catch. That's a guy that I don't think he's a guy that should be starting at a place like Clemson, but I think he's a guy that can be a rotational piece and give you some good quality reps and help you. But when you look at the top 4 receivers on this team, Antonio, Wesco, TJ Moore, and Tristan Smith, that's a pretty dang good group. That's about as solid as you're going to find. You're not going to find many better than that across the country. And, recruiting at Clemson at wide receiver had fallen off some, and there's no denying that. I think not only that, I think they had suffered from some misevaluations, not just Clemson because it's some of those guys every school around the country was after, and they just didn't pan out. It set them back, and it's taking a little while to get back, and I think we're finally starting to see them get back, on a similar level as to where they were, back during those days. There's still an appeal in place to try to go above 105, like 125 with Walker. I know there have been some, I don't even know how to term this right, but the judge was hearing from some of those people today. I don't know if it's a official appeal, but it didn't sound like she was, listening to some of the reporters that were there. It didn't sound like she was very swayed by their arguments. We're talking about, if you look at Clemson's roster specifically, they had 100, 140, 100, I think 140 something on the roster last year. So that means you're going to have to let go of about 20. And some of those walk-ons exhausted their eligibility, so you don't have to let go quite that many. I mean, it's going to vary from school to school. Not everybody has 140 something. Some do. Some only have 130 something. Some only have 120 something. It just depends on what school it is. But it sounds like 105 is going to be the number. Nobody can tell you that for sure at this point, but kind of based on some of the feedback those reporters in the building today were talking about it. It sounds like she wasn't very swayed. Did Clemson estimate? I never heard them announce a crowd, official number for the crowd. I asked somebody up there about that after the game, and he said he threw out the number 35, and I don't think there was close to 35,000 people there. I don't think there were nearly as many people there this Saturday as there was last year. I kind of estimated it to be somewhere between 27 and 30. One lower bowl was full. The other lower bowl, it wasn't nearly half full. Maybe a third. That might be being generous. But no, I never heard them announce a number. So Terrell and Hampton starters, followed by Lucas and Gibson. I think we could use a solid fifth option out of the portal for cornerbacks. And who are you going to get to come out of the portal to be a fifth option? I don't know you're going to have much luck with that. Most of the guys in the portal are looking for more playing time, not less. You're not. I think for a fifth option, you'd have a guy like Strozier. Those are not all the cornerbacks on the team. Miles Oliver finally got on the field after, struggling with some injuries and stuff his first 2 years. He's still around. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody. There's another cornerback or two on the roster. But I think you have a hard time finding somebody to come be a third-string cornerback. Comparing Davidson to ETN, yeah, I don't like to do too much. I don't like to do player comps. I don't know. Rarely does the player live up to it. I mean, I guess you could see some similarities there, but they wear the same number, so that plays a factor in there too. I don't know that Gideon's got quite the speed that ETN had, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have speed. He's got plenty of it. I'm just saying I don't know if he's quite as fast as ETN was. I kind of see ETN just as one of those guys in his own light, man, and it's hard to compare somebody else to him. And I kind of see Gideon in that regard. I think Gideon is probably, again, not quite as fast, but probably stronger. You look at those tree trunks where he's got for legs. I think he could probably be used more. And when he needs to, he can pick up probably more power yards than ETN did. But I'm just not big on player comps. Anybody that's listening to this knows that I've been speaking highly of Gideon since the first time I started watching his film and stuff. I know he played at a private school there in Virginia, not a big private school, and you can question some of the competition he faced, man. But it's hard to put up the numbers he put up. I don't care what level you're playing at. They're like video game-like numbers. and he led his team to back-to-back state titles. I think the guy's just a winner, and I think that plays a part in it too. When you already are accustomed to winning and know how to win, I just kind of see him as a guy, and I see him as Gideon. I don't see him as a guy that reminds me of so and so or this guy or that guy. I just kind of see him as Gideon. I do think he's got the potential to be one of the best backs that's ever come through here, and that is saying something. I don't throw that out there lightly. I don't know. Right now, you got to prepare as if Zachary's not going to be back, because right now, officially, he does not have another year. It sounds like in the last day or so, somebody in his same position has filed suit against the NCAA looking to get that JUCO year back. Now, how that case plays out might have some kind of impact on Zachary down the line. I have heard he's going to go through the draft process, as he should. Even if he had another year, he should go out and do that. So I mean, he's got some time. I don't know exactly how he's going to handle that yet. I don't think, last time we talked to him about it, I don't think he knew exactly how he was going to handle that yet. But I do think it did sound like that there was a guy that's in his same exact position that they're telling him he doesn't have another year. Matter of fact, I think he's from College of Charleston. And I think he had a lawyer file suit on behalf of him yesterday. So how that thing plays out might have some bearing on what Zachary does. But either way, you got to prepare as if he's not going to be back next year. If you get him back, gravy, that's great. But you gotta prepare as if he's not coming back. That's why I think Brownell will bring in more than one more guard, or more than one guard. He hasn't brought in any guards yet. Did we learn anything about second-team linebacker and defensive end from the scrimmage? I thought Jeremiah Alexander looked solid, man. He blew up Keith Adams one time, and you don't really hear about people blowing up Keith Adams. Blow up might not be the right term, but stop him dead in his tracks. I thought he showed a lot of promise Saturday. And we all know that Clemson's, Mike linebacker and Will linebacker have been having to play all the snaps the past few years because there's been no depth. Now that you brought Alexander in there, some of that might change. He was playing at Mike Saturday. And, what happens at the other spot might depend on, Kobe McLeod and where he's at. Logan Anderson, the freshman they brought in, he tore ACL last year, so I wouldn't expect anything from him this year. I don't know that Jamal Anderson's suited to play at will, but I do. If Kobe McLeod gets back and he's fully healthy and he's made as much progress as some of those coaches make out, I think you're going to have more depth at linebacker than you've had the past few years. Now, that's a big if with Kobe, make no mistake, but at least Alexander gives you some, even him alone gives you more depth than you had the past few years. I was really encouraged by what I saw from Darian Mayo Saturday too. He played a lot. He actually, he was one of the top. He might have had the most tackles of anybody on the team. I'm trying to go back and look right now, but I think he has showed a lot of growth from where he was. He had. Let's see here. So he has 7 tackles, a sack, 2 tackles for loss. For a guy that didn't enroll early last year, I think he's showing a lot of promise now. Does that mean he cracks the 2 deep? I don't know yet. But at least we're starting to see some of that potential with him. We didn't see Cade Denoff. We didn't hardly see any from Will Held. I thought Jaheim Lawson had a good day. Heck, Marcus Dixon had a sack, man, late in that second half. But I thought Jaheim Lawson had a pretty good day. He had a sack and several tackles. As long as you're not relying on those guys to start and you can rotate them in and out situationally, I think he'll be fine. I think where you get into trouble is relying on guys like Denoff and Lawson to start. But when they're spelling a guy like Helt, I think that puts you in a much better situation. First time I saw Tristan at the podium, it looked like his arms are long. Yeah, he looks taller than 6'5". I've stood next to him a couple of times now, and both times, you think you'd be the second time when you're standing by him, you think you know what to expect, but I mean, you're just like looking dead up at him. I mean, he just seems like he's so tall. I'd be anxious. I'd be curious to know what his wingspan is, though. His catch radius, or however you want to call it, because man, he's got some long arms to go with that frame. He can just reach right over the top of you and pluck that thing out the air. Sheldon out. Yeah, he got hurt. He's been out for a couple weeks now. That's another guy that can play corner for you. Sheldon Lewis. He's done it before. But he should be back ready to go by fall camp. I think Alexander will be a reserve behind Sammy. The question becomes, like I said a minute ago, over the past few years, we've not seen that Mike linebacker, that Will linebacker rotate out of there very often. Even, late in games when Clemson was decidedly ahead, we saw Barrett and Woodaz playing a lot of the snaps for much of the season last year. That changed a little bit down the stretch when Sammy started to play more. But if you go back to the year before last, before Sammy was there, it was more the same. And the year before that, you can even go back to some of Venables' teams, and it was like that. Just don't think they've had a whole lot of trust in those linebackers behind those starters. What Alexander's role is going to be will ultimately, be up to him. I mean, he's not going to go out and beat out Sammy or anything, but if he can earn their trust and show that he can be relied on when the lights are on, then he's going to get on the field. They would much rather be able to give Sammy a breather and not have him wore out after 3 quarters. That's definitely the way to go. If you can get Alexander in there to play this series, play that series while Sammy's getting a breather, that's you keep that guy fresh. To me, that would be the best case scenario. And I think, if you watch what happened Saturday, I think he's well on his way to doing that. Most overhyped Clemson football player in the spring and most deserving of more hype. Let's see. I'm trying to think of a guy that got a lot of hype that I didn't think he really deserved it, and I can't think of one off the top of my head. Because I think I think there's a lot of bright spots on this team. Guy deserving of more hype. Maybe Vic Burley's had more of a better spring than we've been hearing about. That's a guy that's kind of struggled with injury the past 2 years. Kind of put on some bad weight, last year while he was hurt. He looks like he shed that weight. No, I'm not saying he deserves all this hype or anything, but he's a guy that comes to mind. Peter Woods is a guy that looks like he's dropped some of the bad weight he added last year. Man, I don't have a good answer for you on either of those fronts. A week ago, I might would have said Adam Randall as the most overhyped guy. But after talking with some people this week, I've changed my mind on that. Yeah, I'm sorry, man. I just don't have a good answer for you on either one of those. Not even on one that deserves more hype. There's so many veterans on this team. You kind of know who everybody is at this point for the most part. Yeah, I'm looking at stats from Saturday. I don't really see anybody that I thought was overhyped. And I usually have, it's not my opinion most springs, because there's usually this spring superstar that we don't ever hear from again. That's not very difficult. Linthicum, you get 4 of your 5 starters from last year back. Those are going to be 4 of your starters, and then it's probably going to be Colin Sadler in there for Marcus Tate. Did tackling look better? Yes, I thought some of the fundamentals were I thought you could tell there's been more of an emphasis placed on some of the fundamentals. I thought guys were where they were supposed to be. It didn't look like they were overthinking. It looked like they were just kind of playing more freely. And when you do that, it's going to open you up to play better. And I thought the tackling was much better yesterday. Has Knaak lost velocity on his fastball? He was sitting 93, 94 last year. And now I've seen him hit 95 this year. So no, he's not lost velocity on his fastball. He's added some pitches. He throws 2 different types of fastballs, and one of them's not going to sit 93, 94. It's going to sit more in that 91, 92 range, and the other one will sit 93, 94. Some of that's going to depend on who they're playing that day, who the batter is, and those kind of things. But yeah, I've seen him hit 95 this year. Randall seems more like a third down. He don't look like any third down running back I've ever seen. He doesn't look like any type of running back, Harley. He is not your typical running back, and I definitely wouldn't call him a third down back. Now you might see him doing some kick returns. I'm telling you, it took me a little while to start buying into it, but after talking to some of the people I talked to in the past week, I'm starting to buy in. Like Adams, which Adams are we talking about? Keith Adams or Amari Adams? I thought Amari showed flashes, but I also thought he showed some areas where he needs to improve. I've watched Amari a lot in high school. And during his junior year, I thought he needed to learn how to play with his motor always running. And I thought he did that as a senior. I thought his motor was always running. It looks like some things might be a little too fast for him at this point. I'm not saying his motor's not always running now. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I just think maybe there might be some things that are coming at him real fast right now. I thought there were a couple guys that looked like they got winded, got tired. I thought he might have been one of them. So he's probably trying to still working on getting in the kind of game ready shape you need to be at this level, which is a lot different, than at high school when you're better than everybody else on the field. I can't answer when Haynes will be cleared to play, but he probably will be back at practice in some capacity in the fall. To me, it's not about when he's cleared to play, but how long does it take him to get back to fully trusting that knee? Talk about somebody that looks like a third down back. To me, that's Jay Haynes. I just haven't ever seen him as an every down guy. Sometimes it takes those running backs a while to fully trust that knee again after they've torn ACL in it. So that's just one you got to play by ear and see where he is. Tyler Brown plays there. Yeah, he had one catch. I don't remember him playing a lot, though. I know Capehart and Lee both had minor surgeries to get something cleaned up. Should there be any worry they aren't back in time? I don't think so. I think they'll both be back by fall camp. I don't think if that was a concern, I don't think they would have waited so long to do Capehart's. And I think they did Lee's when they realized he needed to go ahead and do it. But no, I think they'll be ready to roll come start of fall camp. Do I think Mafah gets drafted? Yeah, but probably not until later on. Tell us about the. Yeah, I didn't think you could get a good gauge on the offensive line. Like I said at the top, there was just too many starters out. So you didn't really get a good feel. Tristan Lee's out. Walker Parks is out. Colin Sadler is out. I'm missing somebody else too. I know Blake Miller is about the only one that's not out, I think, and Ryan Linthicum. So there's just, I thought, something happened to Braden Jacobs in the pregame. I don't know if, he tweaked something or if he had already tweaked something and some tape had come off, but they ended up having to retape up one of his ankles and he was limping around for a few minutes. So I don't think we got see him at his best. I think we'll have a better gauge of that in the fall. But you pretty much know what you got with the offensive line. And seeing as you're going into year number 2 under a new coach, to me, that's kind of when you take your biggest jump, between year 1 and year 2. I thought the pass protection took major strides last year. I thought the run protection the run blocking was better, but there was still a lot of room for improvement, and I expect that to happen this year. Defensive tackle room is going to be Elite, Woods, K-Part, Burley, Adams, Defile. Yeah, I believe you got a lot of depth at defensive tackle, which, tends to be the case more often than not at Clemson. He didn't even mention Heaven Brown Schuler, who I thought looked really good, when he was out there Saturday. There's we'll see about Champ Thompson. He's another one. So, yeah, you got a lot of depth there, man. Elite level depth, too. I can't answer why the crowd was smaller. It could have been a lot of factors that played into that. I would think it not being on TV would have drove some people within driving distance there, since you can't watch it on television. Some of that could, I know the game's free, but it still costs money to drive there. You got to pay for food. Some people got to pay for lodging. Some of that probably played into it. And to be quite honest, man, spring games aren't the most exciting of things. I've never been a big fan. When my kids were younger, that's when I used to like going to spring games, because I could take the whole family and it was free, and you can go down on the field and they can get autographs or whatever, man. But just as a pure football fan, to me, there's not a lot to be taken from those things, and with as expensive as everything is these days, people just might not see the worth in spending the money, even though I know the event's free, but everything else isn't. Yeah, I don't know if – I know Middlebrooks went in the portal, but I don't know about Josh Beadle. Do you expect Olsen, Pat, Henry to be the starter this year? Do you think the tight ends will be very productive this year, minus Brennan Stewart? Sometimes I think you can have addition by subtraction, if you catch my drift. Yeah, I think Olsen, Pat, Henry, assuming he's fully healthy, and he should be by then, he's been out this spring, which has given Betancourt a ton of reps. It's given Logan Brooking a ton of reps. It's given Josh Sapp a ton of reps. I think Betancourt has got an extremely high ceiling. And if he takes that jump that some guys do between year one and year two, he might end up being hard to keep off the field. But I'm a big fan of Olsen Pat Henry. He might not be the dynamic pass catcher that a guy like Brennan Stewart was, but he's going to give you so much more when it comes to the dirty stuff that are required of tight ends that Brennan Stewart didn't appear all that interested to be in doing at times. So I think we might see some addition by subtraction there this year. How do I feel about the secondary? I like the corners. I think you got a question. I think there's a little bit of a question at safety and who replaces RJ Mickens, because I think he just provided so much on the back end last year. Not just the veteran leadership. What are you doing? Huh? What? I done lost my train of thought. You acting a fool back there. I think you got some options, though. Again, I've said it many times, man. I am all bought in on Ricardo Jones. I think he's going to be a really good player. I think he brings a lot of athleticism to the back end of that thing, man. He's a ball hawk. I think Khalil Barnes is going to rebound from his sophomore slump season. So, I think the back end should be pretty solid. I think it's fair to question the safety spot, but I like the corners. Nobody's talking. Nope, nobody's saying much about Tyler Brown. Maybe he's a guy that deserves a little bit more hype. But at the same time, you kind of know what you got in him. But he does get overlooked some, man, after he was out pretty much all of last year. He's getting overlooked with some of those other guys that are in the wide receiver room now. And I don't think it's going to take him long to remind people who he is. Keith Adams missed his window last year. I don't know if I would quite term it that way. I just don't see him as being an every down back at this level. Maybe a short yardage specialist or something like that, goal line specialist. I just don't see it. He's got some similarities to Mafah in the way he runs stuff, but I think Mafah was by far the more complete back, and the fact that he couldn't get on the field when Mafah was all beat to hell, I just think that speaks volumes. Starting wide receivers game 1, Antonio Bryant, Wesco, TJ Moore. What did you think of Cade's deep throws? Been reading these throwing great. He does look like he's got some more oomph on the ball this year. He's bigger, he's stronger, and that's going to impact his arm strength. He was not throwing those lollipops. And I tend to like to watch the quarterbacks in pregame, and I did notice they were more instead of. So yeah, he does look like he's gotten bigger and stronger, and that's going to have an impact on his arm strength. All right, take a few more, and then I got to wrap this up. Am I wrong thinking last year's baseball team was better than the Bats? No, you're not wrong, man. This team does not have nearly the pop of last year's team. You had 2 guys, I think, last year that hit 20 home runs. You might not have a guy hit 10 this year. I thought this team would not have nearly. I didn't think they were going to have pop like last year, not even near that much, but I thought they'd have more than what we've seen. Now, I do think there are some good hitters in this lineup. I just think they haven't quite put it all together yet. I think if they do, they will be a very dangerous team. But if they don't, I don't know that I foresee a run to Omaha. You get Michael Gillen back, and you get Talon Bell, kind of off of a pitch count, and that just makes the pitching staff that much deeper. You might have enough arms to make that kind of run, but I just don't know about the bats. Now, if a guy like Colin Priest starts hitting his potential, if a guy like Josh Pano keeps hitting his potential like we've seen in the past 4 games, if there's a couple more guys in there that I can't think of. If you get whoever's in right field, which McClatty's been more good than bad, but not quite as much pop as I thought we'd have from him. You've got a lot of good from Listy. I don't think Cam's all the way back to where I thought he would be at this point. He's still having a solid season, just not a Cam-like season. And I think Gerald's kind of struggled behind the plate the last week or so, and he's not giving you what I thought he would at the plate. But you get some of those guys going a little bit more, and I think the offense will be more dangerous, but it's not going to have the same kind of pop as last year's, no matter what. The crowd was smaller because they were burnt out from the surplus sales. And anybody that stood in that line Saturday, kudos, man. You have got my respect, because there ain't no way I was doing that. That thing was long when I got there, and I was told earlier before I had gotten there, it was wrapped all the way around the road that runs beside Little John there, and it was zigzagged before you even get to that road, and you had people in there buying. One person buying 40 jerseys or 30 pair of tennis shoes just so they can go resell them on eBay or Amazon or something, man. They got to do something to kind of limit some of that stuff, man, because I don't think that's fair to everybody else that's been waiting 2 or 3 hours. But, man, you waited in that line. And mad props. $10 can of beer. You should go to some of these other stadiums then, because my only real gripe about the alcohol sales Saturday were calling Miller Lite a premium beer or whichever 2 beers they called premium beers. I don't know that I would have called, or Michelob Ultra, a premium beer. I don't know that I've ever heard of Michelob Ultra referred to as a premium beer, but I thought the pricing was pretty reasonable when you compare it with some of the other college stadiums or NFL stadiums, man, especially when you compare them to some of the pro stadiums. But yeah, I thought it's kind of middle of the pack. I'm not a drinker, though. I don't drink, so. Are we legit national championship contenders? That's a good question, man. I think this team is capable of contending for a national title. Are they capable of winning one? I don't know, man, and I think there's a difference. Like last year, I thought the team was capable of getting to the playoff, but I said many times I didn't know. I wasn't convinced of what they could do once they got in the playoff. I think this team can make the playoff and win a game or two. I got to see some other teams before I can really give an honest assessment of whether this is a national title contending team. I think they had that kind of potential. But I want to see more from the defense. I want to see more from some of the couple of the other teams that are expected to be national title contenders, and see how the two stack up, or how Clemson stacks up to some of those. But I definitely think they are a team that can make some noise in the playoff. I'm not ready to go as far as saying they're capable of winning it all. Not saying they can't. I'm just not quite there yet. I do think if they want to make a run, they need to make it this year, though, because they lose so much after this year. Do you think Tom Allen stays up? No, I think that was just a spring game thing. I didn't really see much of the tight ends the other day, to be quite honest. Olsen Pat Henry's been out. So he definitely did not play. Saw a little bit of sap. He had a 19-yard catch. Brooking had a 2-yard catch. Bettencure had a catch, a little short catch, but they just weren't used much. So there wasn't really a lot to go on. So I can't really give you a lot there. Yeah, we didn't run too far over tonight. I can live with 15 minutes. Want to appreciate everybody that has tuned in tonight. One of the more eventful crowds, or what's the word I'm looking for here, man? One of the better crowds we've had in here in a few weeks, and it's always going to kick back up a little bit when football's what's being talked about, but very lively crowd in here tonight. Very much appreciate it. Want to thank our sponsor again, A-Glass. Take care of all your auto glass needs for anybody right here in the PD. A-Glass, for when you need a glass. Auto glass repair, replacement. Call them today and get yourself a free quote. They got 2 locations, one in Florence, one in Sumter. And you can get a free quote online, myaglass.com. Don't forget, we got much more spring covers to come on the site. Check us out. ClemsonInsider.com. I got a lot of recruiting interviews I've done in the past week or so that I'm going to start rolling out about one per day. Check those out. Be right back here Thursday night with the baseball show. Ashby and myself will go much deeper into baseball for all you baseball fans right here, 7 p.m. If not, we'll see you right back here next Monday.